interfering too much.
Yeah. Well, that's. If you can figure out the answer to that one, please let me know. Although I don't know if I want to know, because then I might be out of a job. So, Eitan, thank you so much for taking the time and having the conversation with me. Good stuff.
Thank you for having me.
All right, great.
Bye-bye.
All right, so guys, stick around. We got a couple more interviews left on RSA 2020 Day 3. So stay tuned.
Disruption is occurring across every aspect of IT. Open source, cloud services, DevOps, and cloud-native software architectures are democratizing IT and radically transforming how business is done. The old ways of creating software and doing IT are being replaced with agile, flexible, faster, and cheaper methods, benefiting vendors and users alike. Accelerated Strategies Group is out to democratize access of industry expertise and knowledge. We use our expertise and experience to offer insightful, intelligent, useful information in a variety of formats relevant to the IT community: digital events, videos, reports, assessments, workshops, and implementation projects with tech vendors, IT organizations, and business leaders. We widely and openly share our work products, often for free. Analyst reports these days aren't worth more than a graph or chart that tells a story or illustrates a market trend. We work with developers, DevOps teams, cloud architects, security engineers, and transformation leaders most every day, creating and implementing transformational strategies and technologies. We're not just thinkers, we're also doers.
All right, thank you, Charlene. All right, back here in the studio for just a moment now as we send things over to our Analyst Corner with Mitch. It's Mitchell Ashley from Accelerated Strategies Group. Mitchell, take it away.
It's Mitch Ashley here with the Accelerated Strategies Group. I'm here with Sanjeev Sharma. We're at RSA, as you can tell from our background, lots of activities going on. And Sanjeev gave a great, matter of fact, it was a fantastic presentation last night at a private dinner that was hosted by Qualys. And Sanjeev was the featured speaker and gave a great talk. So it was really good. I mean, I'm not just saying that because I worked with you. I was pretty blown away.
Oh no, keep going.
Yeah, it was wonderful. Yes. It was fantastic. So I'd love to talk with you about it because that was an audience of CIOs, CISOs, mostly security people.
Pretty much everybody in InfoSec. Yeah.
Really trying to grapple with DevOps, DevSecOps. How does this fit into security? How do organizations adopt this? How do you deal with everything from compliance and auditing to building secure software? When you were preparing for that talk, how did you kind of put your thoughts together of this, how am I going to talk to this audience?
Yeah, and I think thanks for the introduction and for your kind words on the presentation, Rich. But it was a great crowd. It was a great set of people who know security inside out. And as you said, what they're trying to figure out is, now that we are moving towards an agile DevOps style of delivering applications where it's not, there's an end state and there's a steady state. There's no steady state. Right? There is an ongoing continuous flow of changes coming from the developers. And that doesn't mean the developer has become suddenly more important, but the developer does now have a more continuous impact on what we are delivering than he or she used to have before. To answer your question, how I prepared for the talk, I just went back over my conversations I've had with people in this InfoSec world, to CISOs, about how they are handling it and what challenges are they facing. In fact, one of the conversations which I did not talk about yesterday, because it was probably not appropriate, was with a CISO of a large retailer, and I asked him, what's your number one goal? And he's like, not to get my name in the Wall Street Journal, right? Because the only way people will know about him is if they...
I've heard that before, from CEOs as well.
Exactly. He's like, I don't want any Wall Street reporter to know who I am, where I live, what degree I got. And we've seen after those breaches, some of the CISO gets blamed.
They do.
But the world today has become very chaotic. Not only is the software we are delivering changing constantly, we're constantly barraged by people trying to attempt breaching the system, looking for vulnerabilities. It's a constant barrage, it's a chaotic world. And I think the security posture has to now shift with that assumption that everything is constantly changing, everything is being constantly bombarded. How can I make systems more secure by finding those vulnerabilities before they ever get deployed? And that's always been the thinking behind DevOps, is that I want to test before it's time to test. I want to test before it actually gets to quote unquote QA.
So when we test it, it's already been tested.
It's already too late, right? And the thinking behind DevOps, one of the terms we use in DevOps a lot is shift left, right? Make the people on the right who are actually doing stuff become the people who provide what they were doing as a service to the people left of them in the application delivery pipeline. So testers don't test anymore. They provide tools and services to the developers to be able to test the code early. The deployment engineers, build engineers don't build and deploy software anymore. They supply tools to the developers and the testers.
They build the systems that do that.
Exactly. So the thesis of my presentation yesterday, my talk yesterday was that needs to happen in security next. Security needs to get democratized. That requires, first of all, a massive cultural change in the InfoSec world amongst the CISOs and their teams, because they have to be willing to cede power, cede control.
They can't be the gatekeeper
They
anymore.
cannot be the gatekeeper. It's
Matter of fact,
too
they
late.
can't keep up with it. I mean, I feel a lot
too
of
many
compassion
gates.
for them trying to. The world's moving too fast. Too much software is being created.
Absolutely.
Too many demands on doing it much more quickly.
Absolutely, and that is the challenge, right? So how do I do that? Now in the CISO, in the InfoSec world, and when I'm trying to secure my applications and my infrastructure and my data, I provide tools to the professionals who are now responsible for it, who are the owners, who are the builders, so that they can secure the infrastructure, the code, and the data as they are working with it and testing it for vulnerabilities. The best time to test for a vulnerability is when the code is written.
Yeah, freshly minted.
Absolutely.
You had a really good framework of talking about this, and one of the concepts that you talked about was guardrails. So part of this seceding control, meaning security people are not doing all of the validation testing, etc., for security vulnerabilities, but providing the right kind of guardrails so that others can do that work as part of their
Yeah,
responsibility.
so let me clarify. That doesn't mean that security people are not doing it, but they want to reduce the burden on what they have to do by
okay.
empowering others to do it earlier. Right? No security person is going to now suddenly stop doing what regularly they were doing anyways. Just that
Kind of encapsulating what they know or how they want people to operate.
they also
in those
want others
guardrails.
to have already checked it before, right? Just like a QA tester is already going to do all the testing, but they're going to test at a different abstraction layer. Instead of doing functional testing, maybe they're going to do integration testing, because they're assuming the functional testing was already done by the developers as they were writing code. But what about at the integration layer? So same way the security professionals, they should be able to look at the logs and the results of all the vulnerability testing the developer did when she was building a Docker image, and they go, well, it passed. I don't need to do anything, but let me still test the system as well. So it's not a question of not doing it; it's reducing the burden, but introducing automation and empowering other people to do it. So I think that is extremely critical, right? And yes, it's a cultural shift, it is a thinking shift, but it's also a technology shift, because the automation needs to be brought in. You can't do this manually.
You talk about the shift. How it's a big theme, I think, at RSA this year that I've heard multiple times is democratization of security. Where do you think CISO security professionals are on that curve of? Are we just at the kind of dawning realization stage if that's what we need to do? Have we kind of figured out what it really means to do it, and then there's sort of the embracing and really living it out? Where do you think we are?
I think it's an early stage, right? I think the cultural shift has not happened yet,
I agree.
because they still have all the responsibility.
Yeah, no one said, oh, by the way, it's okay. These people are doing it now.
Exactly. Now everybody else is doing it, so you're not responsible. They still have all the responsibility. It's having, the hammer is still going to come down on them at the end of the day. So going back to your comment about guardrails, right? I think it's going to be time before they build the confidence that these tools can actually provide guardrails which are foolproof and they can trust. If you remember my presentation, I said democratization of any technology has 4 requirements. Number 1, it needs to be self-service, which means you have to have automation, so the practitioner who is creating code which might be vulnerable can self-serve the tests to look for it. Second thing, it has to come from permission, with permission to act. If I still need to get an approval from a CISO to, or my an
Might as well just
executive,
let them test it.
yeah, and then what's the point, right? Third is guardrails, right? That automation has to build guardrails, providing people a safe path to go on. But those guardrails have to be trusted, and they have to allow us to seed trust to the practitioner. That trust part is going to take time. It is not
does.
going to happen overnight.
It's not easy for security people to easily engender trust. Not that they're not trustful people, but it's their job.
It is their job
right?
to be skeptical and say, there's Easter eggs in this code. I know it. How do I find it? There's a backdoor here somewhere. I have to go on with that assumption that it's there and I have to find it. You can't say it's not there without doing all the rigorous testing. You can't say there is no library, open source library, this is dependent upon, which is perfectly secure. You have to have that mechanism built into your mindset to say, I'm always looking for what can go wrong. The trust says that my automation, my guardrails that I've built are secure enough and are hardened enough that if the code has followed that path and gone through all the checkpoints which I built for the developers and the testers to go through, this is secure code. That's going to take time to get to, and it's going to take time to even build that automation. A lot of that tooling is not designed for me allowing you to run who is not an InfoSec expert. You are, the developer who's not an InfoSec expert to run that automation and understand what the results mean, right? That trust that the developers are not constantly trying to find a way to bypass the guardrails.
Well,
that trust will take time.
And it also goes to providing tools in a way that developers will see it as an aid, not an impedance to getting code out the door. I have a hypothesis. We have a little bit of time left I want to run by you. I'm interested in your thoughts on it. Feel free to totally disagree or agree, whatever you feel. This shift towards democratization of security, my sense is that it's in some ways being led by the customers, not the vendors in the industry. And the reason why I say that is there may be some thought leaders in the vendors. I'm not saying there aren't. But it's such a massive shift, I think, for security product companies to start thinking of developers as their customers and how to sell in a dev world, kind of developer relations world, versus an enterprise security type sale. But the customers kind of have to lead the giving up, if you will, control in place of trust and guardrails and the elements that you thought of. So it's really the end customers that have to lead this transformation, not necessarily the vendors. So I'm not saying I 100% believe, it's just a hypothesis.
I think you're true, because I think that is true for all technology. I mean, if we are developing technology to be consumed by somebody, we have to lead them in a particular way.
Unless you're Mark Benioff, and then everybody should have no software buttons, right?
We are in San Francisco. You shouldn't say that here. I can probably see the tower from here.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, you're building software for people to use. Right? You're building tools for people who are developing software to use. In the traditional siloed world, this InfoSec team was in their own silo, and they operated and said, whatever you build, I will make sure it's secure, and I'm going to give you guidelines, secure engineering practices, to make sure you're building good software. But that software was not, you have to assume they'll follow the guidelines, and then you have to assume they'll not follow the guidelines, and I'll look for where.
Assume the worst, right?
Yes. But here now you're saying is, I'm not just giving you a secure engineering guidebook or handbook and policies. I'm actually giving you the tools to validate that what you did follows that. That is a shift. There's a shift in power. One of the things which I agree with you, which I think will drive it, is the sheer lack of talent.
Oh yeah, shortage.
Right, shortage of talent, not lack of talent. There's enough talent. There's a shortage.
So very
of talent.
talented, but very short.
Thanks for the correcting.
Saved you from some tweets.
I know. Seriously,
some bad things, but
yes. So the shortage of talent, and when we are going from an environment where you have maybe 200 virtual machines, servers running, to now 200,000 containers running, to all your data, all your applications running in a data center which you could physically go visit, test there physical
You can
access
go
controls.
downstairs, hear
Yeah.
the fans
Exactly,
humming, right?
and
Not any
do an
longer.
audit of their security systems to make sure where you knew where everything was. Okay, this is where my database is. This is where it fails over to today's cloud environment and SaaS environment, third-party service environment, open dependence on open source software, which is code written by everybody, which is nobody.
Right.
You cannot keep up without ceding some controls and saying, I cannot test it all, I cannot manage it all. I have to empower everybody to manage it all and control it all. And then I become responsible for seeing the results, saying this is where somebody hit the guardrail. Why did they hit it? This is where the guardrail went off the rails, right? It broke. What happened, right? Or this guardrail is wrong, right? I gave the example, it needs to be shifted. I gave the example yesterday about how the definition of EU has changed since Brexit.
Yeah.
So
UK.
exactly, UK is no longer in EU, so all the laws which allowed you to get EU data in Britain, that guardrail has to exclude Britain, UK now, right? To say, okay, that's outside the EU, so if I have to keep my data within the EU, it cannot go to a data center or a developer working out of the UK.
Or if it's there now, got to do something.
Got to do
change
something,
it.
right? And I know there are companies who have their DR. They live on the mainland Europe, and their DR is in UK or other way around. It doesn't work anymore. You can't do it if you have that requirement to say everything has to remain within
GDPR and
UK.
other
So that guardrail shifted. That guardrail has to change. But with automation, this should be just a simple change in my
It's
policy.
easy to move.
Yes.
Easier said than done, but easy to move. What were some of the there were a lot of questions from the audience.
I could have stayed there another hour.
I know. Well, I think it was scheduled for 45 minutes, and you went an hour and a half.
Yes.
In a good way.
Yes, it was interactive. Nobody left.
Nobody
That's my
left.
measure to say, okay, if I run over time, it's a dinner thing. Which
They
means
weren't
people can
checking their
leave.
phones for email
Yep.
either. I was
Yes.
looking around. What were some of the questions? Do you recall any questions you thought were particularly interesting or insightful, or kind of spoke maybe to where you think some of the challenges?
I think
people are wrestling with?
the question was more around how does this DevOps movement, why is it so fluid? I think that was very interesting.
Well, yeah, the definition is not a solid.
Yes,
Well,
because
the
DevOps is
thing.
not a
Yeah,
methodology,
that was-
right? It is an approach. Also, how you apply DevOps depends upon your current state.
That was a really important point. You talked
is
about from your
absolute- yeah,
book,
that is- it
using
is-
playbooks, not.
Exactly,
Here's how to
and
do
it is true for security, how you do security also, right? So the whole idea of me writing a book called the DevOps Adoption Playbook is that DevOps is not a prescriptive methodology. And what
It's
you
not a
have,
methodology.
it is not a
Sure.
methodology at
Right.
all, right? So what I have in my book is a series of plays. It's like a coach's playbook. So if I'm a coach, which I'm not, but if I'm coaching a team, I decide what play to play next with my team on several factors. Am I playing offense or defense? Right? Who has the ball? Who are my players who are on the field at that moment? Is my best player injured, or is my best player on the bench because they need a break? Am I ahead of the game or am I behind the game? If I have technical debt, I'm behind by definition. If it's a greenfield application starting afresh, I'm ahead. You'll be ahead for 2 weeks. When your sprint finishes, you're behind already because you have technical debt. All those decide what am I trying to achieve? Am I building a new application? Am I updating an application? Am I, what kind of technology stack do I have? How mature is my team? How ready is my team to change? All those are factors which go into what play I can play today. And I think that is the thinking which is very critical as we as security professionals think about democratizing security. It's not one size fits all, right? As you're building those guardrails, you have to go, do I have the kind of developers who are always going to try to poke holes in the guardrails? Well, then I'd better start with solid guardrails now. They need to be concrete walls, right? Not a series of yellow light reflectors which say don't go beyond this line.
What are the problems they'll probably run into first, and let's get those things in place.
Exactly. And then it's also, most importantly, the cultural issue. The culture has to change, and the reason DevOps is so difficult to adopt is because most organizations really struggle with changing the culture. This is the way we've always done things. It's not broken, not my
Some
problem.
mindset change, culture change.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it is pretty fundamental.
Over the
difference.
years, I've done a lot of surveys of teams of organizations, and you ever question somebody one-on-one, they're like, hey, are you responsible for code after it leaves your functional area? Of course I am, it's all my code. But in reality, when you see them operate as a team, they're like, shoot it over the wall, not my problem now. And that cultural shift is very critical, and what the DevSecOps movement is doing, saying security needs to be a part of that cultural shift. You can't leave them out.
Well, we want to wrap things up. I just want to thank Qualys for having you speak. Also, Gary Gruber spoke at the night before at a CISO-CIO interchange event. And we're going to be taking some of the talks from both Gary and Sanjeev and posting some elements of that. So you'll be able to see some excerpts of that. So thanks. Good to have
Great,
a
absolutely.
podcast together.
Great.